กด subscribe ให้พวกเราด้วยนะคะ
Hey, welcome back to Tishidoko. Thanks for tuning into our channel. And today we're going to talk to you about finding a rental, apartment, townhouse, etc. to live if you're coming to the province of Saskatchewan. The key things you need to know. We won't go into too much detail here, but really the main things about looking for a rental in this province and maybe some of the differences, especially compared to Thailand. But before we get into it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel so you won't miss anything, turn on the notifications, and thanks again for all the support and for watching. With the people we've met who are moving to Saskatchewan from Thailand, I think one of the biggest differences I've noticed is furnished apartments versus unfurnished apartment rentals or any sort of rental. In Saskatchewan, I don't know about all across Canada, but for sure Saskatchewan, it's not super common to have a furnished rental ready to go. There are spots available, but really it is far more common for it to be unfurnished and for the renter to have to furnish it, with a bed, mattress, TV, table, etc. I think that's the biggest difference is that if you are moving here, especially if you have a really, really strict budget, you're probably going to want to understand that you will get an unfurnished place and you'll have to buy your own furniture to fill it. Like I said, there are ones available, but you do end up paying more per month in rent to account that it is furnished. There's lots of places, again, if you are on a budget that allow you to furnish your place, relatively inexpensive household that could be used or gently used. Places, number one, Facebook Marketplace, people selling their used items when they're looking to upgrade. There's also a lot of used furniture stores in the city and really even just some low cost, retail stores. Walmart, there's a store called Jisk. We don't have IKEA in Saskatchewan, but there is IKEAs right in the province next door as well. Depending on when you're moving here and when your move-in date might be, one thing to maybe plan for is potentially having a mattress ordered and ready to either ship or get delivered in advance, so you're not stuck without a mattress. That's probably the key thing. The rest you could figure out later, but a mattress definitely is something to keep top of mind for sure. Another thing to mention that I've noticed as a difference is the idea of having roommates. So if you're moving here as, a single person student, one way to really save money is to live with roommates. And I think there might be a difference in roommate meaning in Canada versus roommate meaning in other parts of the world. So in Canada, not just Saskatchewan, having a roommate doesn't mean you're actually sharing a bedroom. That does happen, in dorms where you're all in one room. But a roommate in Canada is generally just when you're splitting the rent with another person. You have your own bedrooms. You might share a bathroom. You might share the kitchen, living room. Sometimes you have your own bathroom. But really, your sleeping areas are separate, and it's really separate in that sense. So you'll always have personal space even with roommates in Canada. So it does substantially lower your monthly rent cost because you are splitting everything. You're splitting not only the monthly rent, but things like utilities as well. Internet, power, heat, water, etc. And not just for single people. If you're a couple, it's not like roommates won't rent to a couple. It works out. It's just your preference. So something to consider. So on the note of monthly utilities in Saskatchewan, we also want to talk about what's generally included in monthly rent and what's not. So largely when you sign up for a rental in the province, things like water and heat monthly charges are usually part of your monthly agreement in your lease agreement for the rental. However, that's not true for every rental, but it's usually the most common things included in that monthly price. But then consider also, you'll have to likely pay for electricity on a monthly basis, and depending on the province where you live, it should be similar, and it really is just based on usage. So if you're home a lot, using lights, your computer on all the time, it's going to be higher than if you're, out most of the day, and if you, shut off the lights when you leave. So that's something extra, and also internet. And again, there's many internet plans, depending on the price you want to pay, the speed, etc., what you're using it for. And some people, honestly, if they get a cell phone plan with lots of data and no overage charges, they might even just use their cell phone to hotspot the internet at home as well. So those are just some of the most common extra costs that, first, the common ones that are included in your rent, and probably the two most common that aren't are electricity and also internet. Another thing unique to Canada and not just Saskatchewan is the idea of renting a basement suite. Most homes in Canada have a basement. This is a level below the main level of most homes. So a lot of people who own a home might rent out their basement and convert it to a legal apartment style suite where you'd have your own bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, etc. And it's a way for people to help pay their mortgage costs of their home by converting their basement into a rental. Biggest thing to know with this, if you're not familiar with basements at all, the cold weather in Canada, you don't have to worry that it won't be heated or it'll be too hot. Even though, in the winter, the basement tends to be the coolest part of the house, you'll have the same heat as the homeowner has, so no worries there. And in the summer, it's actually a benefit because it can be quite warm here, and basements do generally stay cooler all year round. Basement suite, for sure, totally legitimate as rental properties. The only really thing to look out for is for them to be legal and safe. You want to make sure they have working windows that obviously show light and can open and close in case of emergency. I guess another important thing to know with a basement is generally you're not walking through the main floor of the house where other people might live. You have a separate entrance that is created that you're able to just have open from the outside and head right down into your personal suite. Another thing, if you've never driven in North America, especially the parts of North America with snow, you might be considering, depending on how long you're here, buying a car here versus, just taking the bus or commuting in another way. With rentals, some of them definitely, they have parking spaces. Some will be, underground or covered for the winter, whereas other ones will be outside and exposed in the weather, but generally have, a stall where you can plug in your vehicle, and this enables you to keep your block heater and or a battery warmer plugged in during the really cold times of year. However, not all rentals come with parking spaces, and this is generally outlined when you're either looking online or talking to a potential landlord or in the lease agreement. So this is one thing to be mindful of. If you are considering a car, you want to make sure your place has a parking spot. Not all landlords or buildings will allow pets. So it's an important thing if you're a pet lover to check in and be sure, pets are allowed. Or maybe you want to live in a pet-free building because of allergies or anything like that. It's all should be outlined, and you can ask about that as well. The other thing I think most common would be laundry services. Generally in Canada, when you own a home or an apartment, you have laundry right in suite, a washer, wash your clothes, and a dryer. Because we have winter, 4 months of year, we don't necessarily hang our clothes out to dry. So we would, need a washer and dryer. And I would say in, most rental units, especially if you're renting a suite that's part of a private home or a private townhouse, you'll have it right in suite. Some of the newer apartment buildings, you'll have in-suite laundry. Even the older apartments, it won't be in-suite laundry, but there'll be a shared, laundry area. Each of them is a little different, but again, these are details that should be outlined when you're looking online. You can confirm with any landlord or in the lease agreement as well. So finally, when you are moving to Canada or Saskatchewan, common across the country is to sign a lease agreement. And a lease agreement isn't just for the landlord and what they're agreeing to, but it's also for you as a legal, representation of what both parties agreed to, and it gives you, recourse if something went wrong and you needed to ask questions or have something fixed. So lease agreements all across the country, every one will be a little different depending on if it's a private landlord versus a large rental company. But make sure you have a lease agreement, you review it, you ask questions if you don't understand something. There are a few common, things in the lease agreement. It will explain what the monthly rent is, when it's due, how much it is, and when you have to pay. It'll explain, what's included, what's not. it'll give an overview of the terms of your agreement. So your move-in date, your move-out date, the term of the lease. And it'll also, stipulate things like what happens if you are late on a payment, what can the landlord do, these types of things. So really it's protection for everyone. I think things to be mindful of with the lease is that, often landlords will rent for a year. It's not the only term of a lease, but landlords want to be able to secure their income for at least a year. So a very common term is 1 year. However, a lot of landlords are open to negotiating start dates and end dates. If it's 13 months, if it's 11 months, you just really have to talk and figure out what might be possible. Another thing is, given that, the yearly time frame is often, move-in will be the beginning of a month. There are a couple things, like I said, talking to your landlord, if you're coming mid-month, adding 2 weeks to the agreement. A lot of landlords are flexible and it's possible. However, if that's not possible, there's also Airbnbs in Saskatchewan, all across Canada, that if you needed to stay somewhere for a week or two, that's also an option. And then you can start your lease on the agreed to start date. The other big thing financially with a lease agreement is the idea of a damage deposit or first month's rent. Some landlords require first month's rent up front plus a damage deposit. The damage deposit itself is really something that's held by the landlord for the term of the lease, assuming you don't make any damages to the unit and you're following the rules, that is something that's returned to you upon your lease ending. This is completely standard, and usually the damage deposit is equal to 1 month's rent. Usually your first payment is almost like a double payment, but assuming no issues over the course of your contract lease, you get it back at the end. One good thing to do is if you're doing your first meeting with the landlord, walking through the place, it's a good idea just to take photos. It's not considered rude, but if you notice a nick in the paint or a nick on the floor, you don't want to be blamed for that at the end. So it's a good idea just to have records of how things looked when you moved in. So what we've described today, I think, are the most important things to keep in mind when you're thinking of moving to, not just Saskatchewan, but Canada in general. And the most common differences between, renting in Thailand versus potentially renting in Canada and Saskatchewan. We hope they've been helpful. Let us know if you have any feedback or questions in the comments. If you do have a move coming up specifically to Saskatchewan and you're maybe having trouble knowing where to start, finding a place, or looking for, a landlord, a rental, have more questions, you can reach out to Tui and I on Tide Canada. We'd be happy to give you our advice, help you through the process. We'll put a link in the description, or reach out to either Tishy Delco, Tide Canada pages on Facebook. We're happy to respond and help you through the process, give you our advice with it all. Thank you so much for watching. We're always happy to share this knowledge of how things work in Canada and really answer any questions you do have. Remember to like the video, share it to your friends if they're interested in moving here. Thank you so much for all the support. Saudi Cup, have a great day.